when you're watching Iron Man 2, I don't know if it's just like recency bias. Like I just watched it. I don't know what it is, but this movie is not as bad as I remember it being. For some reason, I guess I've gotten it in my head that it's like a terrible bad movie because everybody says it's like, I mean, it's, do I think it's as good as the first Iron Man? No. But the first Iron Man was so new and exciting. The second one, I mean, it definitely has some nitpicks. You can nitpick it all day. I'm not saying it's not like it's a perfect movie by any means, but it's definitely like when you understand it, you know what I mean, and you just kind of like sink into it and accept it for like what's going on. You kind of just learn to have fun with it and just go with the flow with it. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that makes it a bit like, you know, where do you want to start with the nitpicking? Huh? You can start with the goofy. I guess maybe the goofy fights. If you want to start off with that, you can start off with like maybe the spectacle, or you can make it like the inconsistency of the characters, the villains, their motivations, how quickly things change and happen, why things change, how the dialogue between the characters, the change of actors and characters and whatnot. So it's like it's a whole thing. It's moving pieces and whatnot. They don't make it a perfect straight line. There are a lot of changes in this one. The biggest change, obviously, being the change of Colonel James Rhodes. They got rid of Terrence Howard and then replaced him with Don Cheadle. And I think in the grand scale of, you know, the Marvel movies, I think they made the right choice. It was definitely a good choice. Don Cheadle is absolutely fantastic, and for him to be a part of, you know, the Iron Man or the Marvel movies, I think is really cool. I think he's a great addition to the cast. I think he's a great actor himself. A little underutilized, but in this movie, I think he does a great job with like the transition. You know what I mean? And I kind of like the hint that like he knows he's different and he does that change. He's like, hey, I'm here. Deal with it. Let's move on. You know what I mean? Like he kind of talking to the audience as well as Tony in that moment. But I do like the story. I don't hate the story. Could it have been tweaked a little bit? Could they have gone a little more in depth with like Tony and what he was going through and kind of like how the government was trying to seize the Iron Man suits? I feel like that could have been like that courtroom scene where he's in there with like having that hearing about whether or not the Iron Man suit is a weapon or not. I feel like it could have been, I definitely think that could have been a whole movie itself. It could have just been like a whole movie of just that, of them debating back and forth. But in the end, you know, they make it short and sweet and funny and comical and kind of like, they give you like like a 5-minute debate of like whether or not that would be possible in real life. And I think in real life, obviously he would have to turn over the Iron Man suit. Somebody else would have to, you know, he wouldn't be able to own, I guess, that intellectual property, or he wouldn't be able to make more, I guess, or he wouldn't be able to fly it. Like there would be any number of, you know, safeguards or rules put in place so that way he couldn't just operate freely. But at the same time, right, it's kind of like, well, he has the suit, give it to the US military so that they can use it and do what they want with it. And we want some of that. And I think that's a really smart aspect to it. And if they had just kept that aspect with no, I guess, Ivan Vanko in it, I think it would have been a much more, I think that would have been a more compelling story. I feel like that they were trying to fill so much stuff into Iron Man 2 because they didn't know what the reception was going to be following the first Iron Man. The first Iron Man blew it out of the water. It was so amazing. It was such a great head start that they were like, okay, we're trying to do this thing. Let's put all the pieces let's put all our eggs into this one basket so that way we can like drop it off later and we can like call back and do this and do that, right? It wasn't about telling the story. It was also about setting up this larger than life universe, this connection between Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk and what will become Thor and Captain America, so that they can make it this larger than life story. So anyways, when it comes to Ivan Vanko as a villain, I mean, he's very just straightforward, just wants to kill Tony, just wants to do anything it takes to see him lose, be down at the bottom. And that involves killing him. Just, I don't know, it's very straightforward, it's very direct, but at the same time, I'm kind of liking those villains now. I'm kind of liking villains who are very emotional and they just want one thing to kill and they don't care what's in their way. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was something I liked. You know what I mean? I'll never be like, oh, he's just evil for evil's sake. Well, it's like, yeah, somebody has to be evil. Somebody has to be the bad guy here. And I don't know why it feels like now it's like, oh, I sympathize with the villain and I actually want the villain to win. It's like, no, he's a bad guy. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like that more and more and more. But in this one, straightforward, direct. Hammer. Oh my gosh, I forget the actor's name who plays the Justin Hammer or whoever. That guy, I've seen him in 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I forget his name. Darn it. Man, he does a great job in this movie, being like he's like Tony Stark was before he got the arc reactor in his chest. Like that kind of arrogance, that kind of like, obviously he's worse at the technology aspect, but he's definitely, his business, Hammer Industries, is right there next to Tony Stark's, Stark Industries. So they were competing businesses, but they're both successful. That's how he's able to get his money and whatnot. But I think it was really interesting how they used him in this movie. Again, it's not just Ivan Vanko. It's not just the military. It's also Hammer Industries. And then it's like, it feels like they put a bunch against Tony Stark, and it just felt like maybe it should have been, or it definitely could have been, maybe just those two villains, but then they throw Ivan Vanko in there and it becomes this whole mess, right? So I don't know, it needs to be, what's the right word? It just needs to be a lot more direct. I don't know what the right word is. Sam Rockwell, that's his name. There it is. Sam Rockwell does a great job in this, and I think they should definitely bring him back as like a villain for something, in the Marvel movies. I think it'd be really interesting to see him come back. Maybe something with him, and they could definitely bring back Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Jon Favreau, like as if they don't already have enough problems to deal with, one, Tony dying and them dealing with kind of like the Mysterio backlash from Spider-Man, I guess. But they could definitely bring him back, something like that, you know what I mean? I think it would be really cool and interesting, especially because it's been so long since we've last seen him. That's kind of like, okay, let's bring him back. But yeah, I think he did a great job. He definitely had a lot of fun playing this character, and he may not have been given the best dialogue to work with, or like, it's kind of hard to be the other arrogant businessman when you already we've already seen that played out and done. Just, I don't know, it just doesn't fit. But anyways, I thought that all of the villains in this movie, they did their jobs pretty well, I might say. Is it perfect? No. Did they do it? Yes. And I like it. I don't hate it. Other additions, such as Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, you may not, believe it, but that's cinematic, that's film history. That's Marvel action hero history right there. You know what I mean? She became integral to the biggest action adventure, the biggest like cinematic action movies ever. You know what I mean? She does that. You know, and she's the most recognizable action star in a long, long time. And then they brought in other female leads like Captain Marvel would eventually become, when did this movie released? Like 2010? So 9 years later was when they got like their own female lead, you know what I mean? And they obviously had a bunch of other whatchamacallit, supporting characters along the way, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's a big jump. That's a big deal for somebody like that. And it is a bit of a shame that they decided to do a Black Widow movie so late into her Marvel run. It just feels like they had so many interesting things that they could have done that it feels like such a big waste to, I don't know, to wait so long to do something like that. You know what I mean? But in terms of this Iron Man movie, great choice. You know what I mean? I think she did a fantastic job. She kind of gives you a sneak peek of what she can do, so that way they can establish it in the Marvel movies. You know what I mean? They can kind of put it in that perspective of like, oh, who is this? And it's like, no, she was in Iron Man too. Ah, okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? So they do enough hand-holding throughout the movies. But anyways, I thought she was a great addition to the cast as well. Let me think. Is there anybody else that was added? No, I think after that everybody else is just kind of, back in it, doing the same thing over and over again. So she was great in the movie, and they show her being a bit of have her own action sequence. They show what she can do as an agent. And yeah, I thought she did great. It was a great setup for what was to come. And again, possibly one of the downfalls of the movie was setup. They were setting up. They didn't let the movie be definitive. They were setting up Black Widow so that they could bring her back in another movie. And they were setting up the Avengers, just like not as subtly as they did in the first Iron Man movie or at the end of The Incredible Hulk, right? Like now they're being very direct with it, and they're like, we're going straight in this direction. Everybody get ready because it's coming, and when it happens, nothing's going to be the same. It's going to be a whole new thing. And that's the cool part of it. That's the interesting thing of everything building towards a moment in the story, a part of a larger story. So now I think the story goes from him refusing to give over his suits, and now it's just him making a bunch of dumb decisions because his palladium core that's inside of his arc reactor, inside of his chest, is killing him. It's poisoning him. And because it's poisoning him, he's not going to be able to function. He can't work, you know what I mean? And he's scared about dying, and he doesn't want to die. So he's just trying to live his life as crazy as he can, you know what I mean? Do whatever he can, however he wants and capable of doing. So what does a billionaire do with, when he has a death sentence, when he feels like he's coming towards the end of his life? And the answer is just whatever. He can do whatever he wants. And that's kind of like the good and the bad of it, is like he can do whatever he wants, and that's cool for some things, but it's not cool in other things, so it just tanks and destroys everything and messes everything up. So he makes bad decision after bad decision, and he makes Pepper CEO. So much happens in this movie that directly affect the rest of the movies going forward. Pepper remains a CEO from that day on. I don't recall her quitting, or she tried to quit, but he didn't let her, and she stayed the CEO of the company. And they kind of got together. Whatever. Long story short is that, like, that had that movie, that moment of like, I want you to be CEO and to run my company stays throughout the rest of the MCU. And yeah, I think that's a really cool choice. That's a really good idea. So that way Iron Man can focus on, I guess the Avengers or other prospects, you know. What's next? Following the story. Oh, the action. Okay, the action. The action, you can say it's a bit goofy. You can say it's a bit like, oh yeah, they just kind of added some sound effects to it and it didn't feel real, or it was kind of whatever, but I thought the action scenes were really great. I thought they did a great job with it. The suit ups in this movie, compared to the first movie, there's nothing like the first movie when he first suits up. You know what I mean? But in this movie, the cool scene is when he's in Monaco and he has to fight Ivan for the first time, and he has that suitcase with the Iron Man suit and he just puts that bad boy on. That's like probably one of his coolest suit ups. He obviously has more as he goes on, but that was a new one. That was a unique one because it just shows the evolution and how he gets better and better with each suit up. You know what I mean? He can make a suitcase and put it on his chest and then become Iron Man right there. And I thought that was a cool suit up. Let me think. I guess the goofiest fight would have to be when he fights Rhodes, because he's like all messed up and they fight each other and they have like the song playing and they have like the clinking of the metal, kind of like making it a goofy fight when it's really serious, you know? I guess there's also like, I don't know, maybe the end fight where it's like all of those drones versus one Iron Man suit and he's just kind of like destroying them one after another and doesn't feel realistic, or they're like shooting literal bullets at like a crowd of people and it feels like nobody gets shot. Maybe they just don't show it, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's like there's no way they shoot like guns in a city, in a big populated area, and nobody gets hit. You know what I mean? There were explosions and nobody dies, right? Like, it could have been a little bit more gory, you know what I'm saying? But like, they don't go too far with it. I guess it's a PG-13. They don't want to go too blood and violence with it, but I mean, it's the realistic aspect of it. They were shooting into a crowd of people. Like, they were shooting into a building full of people, and the bullets miraculously missed all of them. I was like, no way. Somebody needed to die there. Like, those are the consequences, right, of what they're doing. Let me see. What else is there? There's nothing that's been done that doesn't feel like Tony Stark. Like, I think Robert Downey Jr. does a good job with his motivation or what, like, he's trying to do. You know what I mean? He's dying. He's just trying to enjoy his life and do whatever he wants, you know? I think that's something that I don't know if everybody can relate to, but I know I relate to. I'm just like, yeah, if I was a billionaire, I'd go crazy too with that stuff. I wouldn't know how to handle it. I'd be on the verge of death and I don't want to die, but that's the reality of, living, something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it was interesting. Let me think. So then Tony fights Ivan Vanko because he wants to race in the Monaco Grand Prix. And Ivan Vanko, again, this is another nitpick. Ivan Vanko just so happens to work security at the race, but he doesn't know that Tony's going to race. It was like a last minute thing. So it's like, how did he know that he was going to race when he could have been up in the party surrounded by different people? Like, that's one of those things where it's like, how did he know that he was going to be there? They didn't, right? They just wrote it into the scene and then last minute, So that's a nitpick of it. I feel like even with all of the nitpicks, even with all of it, it just feels, it doesn't feel that terrible to me, you know? There's also Samuel L. Jackson, who comes in to help Tony to get him back on the right track. You know, after he gets his suit taken by Rhodey, he starts being destructive, starts throwing parties, starts using the Iron Man suit as a toy. After the government's breathing down his neck, one bad decision after another, and Rhodey finally takes the suit, and Iron Man's just like, all right, I'm going to go on top of Randy's Donuts and eat in the Iron Man suit, do whatever I want. And then Samuel L. Jackson comes in, and then the Avengers part comes in, and then the connection between Tony Stark's father and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of those intermixing with one another, kind of understanding that, like, oh, that's how this is all connected. So then we see Tony working a way to fix himself, to heal himself, to become something better. And we see the inner workings of, like, oh, we meet Phil Coulson, played by, is it Greg Clark? I forget his name. But yeah, we see him play in the movie. I don't know if this is his first. No. He was in the first Iron Man. Right. So we're not introduced to him. My bad. But he is in the movie, and I think that's really cool. I think that having him there as a reminder of, like, what we're going towards is really nice. And then obviously Tony creating a new element is, scientifically speaking, is a nitpick, but in, like, movie world and the film world, I can get on board with it. You know what I mean? It's just, he has to create something new in order to live. So I thought that was really interesting. I wish they had kind of broke it down more. They just show him with, like, a digital ball, and him, that's how he creates the element. I was like, what? Isn't there more that goes into it? But, they don't really show that part. They just kind of give him, like, this is the element and you create it. It's like, can you explain it a little bit more? But, it's a movie. I don't, again, I'm not mad at it. They just say, hey, this is a new element, and it is. So I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, that's stupid, when I don't know how it works. But I'm just going to believe it. You know what I mean? I believe it when he creates the ball and he does the whole thing with the hologram or whatnot. There it is. There's the element, and they can create it, and now all they have to do is put it into the arc reactor or whatever. So, interesting. Cool. And then after that, it's back to stop Justin Hammer and Ivan Vanko and everything that's going on. So, yeah, that was the movie. And then Pepper and Tony become a thing. And what else is there? I think maybe... Oh, snap. I almost forgot the Stan Lee cameo. They bring him back, but they make, like, this quick joke where he's like... they make the joke that he's like Larry King. I thought that was funny. Oh, and the Elon Musk is in the movie for, like, 2 seconds. He talks to Gwyneth Paltrow, and they have, like, a handshake, because I guess it's like billionaires amongst billionaires, huh? You know what I'm saying? So one genius mind and another genius mind come together, I guess, so to speak. And then Kate Mara was in the movie. She plays, like, she's the one who gives Tony, like, the legal papers for the hearing, the Senate hearing about the Iron Man suits. That was weird. I didn't expect her to be in the movie. That was cool. That was cool, though. I definitely thought that was like, oh, snap, they put her in there. Let me see. Let me think. And then, obviously, it just becomes like this Avengers setup, It becomes about, like, what is Tony going to do in the Avengers? Is the Avengers even a thing? Is he qualified to be in the Avengers or whatever? And they give him, like, the the Shield report or whatever, and they say that like Tony Stark, Iron, what was it? I think it was like Tony Stark unapproved. Iron Man is like, we're looking into it. Definitely sort of capable or whatever. So it's like they approve him, but they don't approve him. They say he can be a part of the Avengers, but he can't be a part of it. And they kind of just say is like, we're just looking at you for consulting for the time being. And I thought that's kind of funny. That's kind of strange, but cool. What else is there? End credits scene gives us a look at what Phil Coulson is doing. Phil Coulson, as Tony was like fixing he was trying to figure out the new element that his dad gave him. And that scene, by the way, where he watches the film of his dad telling him about the element, about what he wanted to create, is a really beautiful moment. But anyways, Phil Coulson leaves because he has to go to New Mexico, and that sets up Thor. I think that's such a cool way of doing it, and that's a way of introducing or like setting up a character that they don't really do anymore, which is fine, I guess, but back then it was kind of like, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing, and this is kind of like the way that we're doing it, and I think that's really cool. I think that's really fun. So yeah, I really like that end credit scene where they show the hammer down on Earth. I think it just kind of makes everything fit in kind of like this box, and everything is kind of like stacking up, and everything's like coming together, all into one. Let me think, what else? Iron Man 2. I don't know if I'm trying to think if they do anything else in this movie that sets up the future. I mean, not really. It all kind of feels like they wrap everything up kind of nicely. You know what I mean? He doesn't give his suits away. He stops Ivan Vanko. Hammer goes to jail. He gets a medal. He gets a medal for his bravery by that governor, that Senate guy. He becomes important later on, which is really interesting. I think that's really cool what they did with his character, or like how they connect it in the larger story when it comes to maybe other characters in the future. You know what I mean? So I think that was really a cool use of what they were trying to do with him and what they can do with him. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So yeah, I thought that was really cool. I don't want to like tell it all right now, but there definitely is a connection between that governor or that Senate hearing guy that like wanted to take his suits and his connection to like a huge villain later on down the line of the story of the MCU. But anyways, we'll get to that on another time. But overall, great. I thought this was a good movie. You know what the big problem probably was overuse, or like maybe overwatching it. Because I'll tell you something. Anytime, like when I used to have like cable or like kind of like that DVR box or whatever, there was a channel called FX. All right. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But there was a channel called FX or FX Movies or whatever it was. And they would constantly play like Iron Man 2, like religiously, like, oh, we need to fill up this time. Let's play Iron Man 2. Oh man, we need a superhero kind of a montage. Let's play Iron Man 2. Oh, what are we doing here? It's a Friday night. It's a Friday afternoon. You know what we can do? Play Iron Man 2. But it's only, you know what? It's 6 a.m., but you know what time it is? It's time for Iron Man 2. They put him in like all of this promotional stuff on cable or whatever, and it feels like they just played it over and over and over and over again to the point where I was sick of it. I was like, dude, they do it like all the time. You know what I'm saying? So I just felt like, for the life of me, I felt like that was the wrong kind of direction to go in, or like, because I saw it so often, I would get like fatigue, or I would just be like, yeah, that movie sucks. Like, it's old, it's tired, I can't watch it anymore. But giving yourself some room to breathe and looking back on it, the movie's not perfect. Iron Man 2 is not perfect, but it is good. And I do like it for, what they were trying to do with the story. Obviously, they were setting up a lot of dominoes in this movie, because it was the most successful out of the two kind of big comic book characters that they were pushing for. So they were pushing for Iron Man first. It did so well. Then they pushed for the Incredible Hulk, and that one kind of did okay. So then they came back and they did Iron Man 2, and then they put all of their eggs into this basket. They put in Black Widow into the movie. They put Phil Coulson, Nick Fury. They put Hammer Industries. They put just about everything they could into this. They put in the new arc reactor, the new element, the clean energy stuff. They put in Gwyneth Paltrow becoming the new Stark CEO. They did any number of things. So, they stuffed it down all into one thing. And by the time it was done, it was kind of like, how can you tell one good story when you're trying to fill it up with so many other plot points and different places to go? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where it messes up. But when it's good, it's good. And I definitely like this movie. So I'll probably rank them all by the end, you know what I mean? By the very end. But for right now, I think it's a good movie, solid movie. As the films go on, though, they're just going to get greater and better and better and better. So I don't fault this movie for what it's done. So, anyways, Iron Man 2, I think it was in terms of sequels, I guess this one was okay. I mean, it was just good. You know what I mean? I don't feel like they did a huge... Well, they did bring War Machine with Don Cheadle, so I guess they did try to make it bigger, but I don't know. It misses the landing a bit, but I felt like this was a pretty good sequel, all things considered. But yeah, Iron Man 2. Good movie, in my opinion. I don't hate it, but definitely I can nitpick it to death. So take that for what you will. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.